Welcome back to the Deep Dive, everybody. Today we're going to be taking a look at Beverly Engel's Healing Your Emotional Self.
Oh, excellent choice.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating look at how our parents, even when they have the best intentions, can sometimes leave us with some emotional baggage,
Right.
And we want to be clear that this deep dive isn't about pointing fingers or diagnosing anybody.
Right.
It's more about using Engel's insights as a way to kind of understand ourselves better, right? Like how those early experiences might still be shaping us today, maybe in ways we don't even realize.
Absolutely. And it's really remarkable how these dynamics, often playing out in very subtle ways, become woven into our understanding of who we are in the world, even long after we've left our childhood homes.
It's like our parents become these mirrors, right? Reflecting back to us who they believe we are.
Exactly. Engel uses this powerful metaphor of parental mirrors throughout the book. And when you're a child, your parents are your primary source of information about yourself, their words, their actions, even their facial expressions. It all gets woven into this reflection that you internalize.
It makes you wonder, what if those reflections aren't so positive, How does that impact us?
Yeah, it has a lasting impact, for sure.
Like, let's say a kid excitedly shows their parent a drawing, and the parent just, barely looks at it before criticizing it or something.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Engel would say, those little things, those seemingly small interactions, they can really stick with us.
They do. Think about it. If you were that child, how would you feel? Probably deflated, right? Maybe even ashamed. And over time, those experiences accumulate, and they can lead you to believe that you're just not good enough. Not creative enough, not worthy of praise. And that's the power of these negative parental mirrors.
And those negative reflections can manifest in so many different ways, right?
Right.
Like, Engel actually identifies 7 types of emotionally abusive or neglectful parenting styles.
Oh, we.
Essentially 7 damaging mirrors.
7 damaging mirrors.
That can really distort a child's sense of self.
Yeah.
I have to admit, when I was reading this section, I was like, oh, wow. It really made me think back to some of my own experiences.
Wow. Yeah, it's definitely eye-opening. And it's important to note that not every parent fits neatly into one category, thankfully. But it can be helpful to recognize these patterns and consider how they might be showing up in your own life, your relationships,
Right.
Food for thought.
For sure. So why don't we break down these 7 types?
Okay, sounds good.
The first one Engel talks about is the neglectful or inadequate parent.
Okay.
And she gets that they often hold up the mirror of, you are unlovable.
You are unlovable. And as you can imagine, this can really manifest in adulthood in a lot of ways. Someone who grew up with a neglectful parent might really struggle to form healthy attachments. Maybe they fear intimacy or they push away partners who are trying to get close. They have a hard time accepting love.
Right, or even recognizing it when it's being given to them.
Exactly.
It's like they've internalized that message, that message of, you are unlovable. And they're almost looking for evidence to support it, even if it means, sabotaging their own happiness.
That is heartbreaking, but it's so common.
It is.
And it really highlights why it's so important to break free from these patterns. Engel talks about challenging those negative beliefs, like you said, learning to identify and meet your own emotional needs, building that strong sense of self-worth that doesn't require external validation.
It's like rewiring those neural pathways.
Exactly.
Creating a new, more empowering belief system.
I love that.
So, moving on to the next one, we have the abandoning parent, right?
Okay.
What kind of mirror do they hold up?
So, with the abandoning parent, the mirror often reflects the message, you don't matter. And this doesn't always mean physical abandonment, although it can.
Right.
Sometimes it's a parent who's emotionally checked out, preoccupied with work or other issues, and the child is left feeling kind of invisible, insignificant.
It's interesting, we often think of neglect and abandonment as being on the same spectrum, but they can manifest in such distinct ways.
They really do. Because with neglect, there's this, emptiness, right? This void where care and attention should be. But with abandonment, there's this more profound sense of not existing, of not being seen or valued for who you are.
So how might someone who's experienced that kind of abandonment, how might it show up later in their life?
Well, they might constantly seek validation from external sources. Like they need constant reassurance from others to feel worthy.
Right.
And they might have a hard time asserting themselves, setting boundaries, that kind of thing. They often put others' needs before their own.
And that could lead to like all sorts of unhealthy dynamics, right?
Oh, absolutely, both in their personal life and professional life. And it really underscores the importance of addressing those underlying wounds. Engel actually talks about the importance of grieving that lost connection with the parent, and processing those really tough emotions, anger, sadness, resentment, and then beginning this crucial work of building a sense of self-worth from within, recognizing their inherent value, their worthiness.
Yeah, moving from that place of feeling invisible to understanding you have a voice, you have value, you deserve to be seen, to be heard.
Exactly. It's a journey of reclaiming your power,
Yeah.
stepping into your authentic self.
Okay, so let's talk about the overprotective or emotionally smothering parent.
Okay.
This one I find particularly interesting because, it's not about a lack of attention,
Right.
but rather an excess of it.
Right, exactly. And it often comes from a place of love, but the unintended message that gets reflected back to the child is, you are incapable.
You are incapable.
Yeah, these parents are trying to shield their kids from every hardship, making all their decisions for them. But in doing so, they're really inadvertently preventing them from developing their own independence, their self-efficacy.
It's like they're so afraid of their child feeling any pain, experiencing failure, that they end up hindering their growth.
And resilience.
Exactly.
Right. And so how this might manifest in adulthood is that a person might struggle with things like decision-making.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, constantly doubting themselves, seeking reassurance from others. They might avoid taking risks or trying anything new just out of this fear of failure.
Because they were never really given that space to stumble and learn and grow from those experiences.
Exactly. It's like they've internalized this belief that they need someone else to navigate the world for them. And it can be incredibly limiting. And it can even lead to resentment and frustration in their relationships because they might feel stifled, suffocated by their partner's attempts to control them or protect them.
Even if those intentions are good.
Even if those intentions are good, it's a complex dynamic. But the good news is that Engel offers, tools for breaking free from these patterns.
Okay.
It's about learning to set boundaries, right? To make your own decisions and to step outside of that comfort zone gradually and build your confidence.
To reclaim that autonomy.
Yes.
You are capable.
Yes. You are capable of navigating the world on your own terms.
Even if it means making a few mistakes along the way.
That's okay. Mistakes are how we learn and grow.
Exactly. Okay, let's talk about the possessive parent.
Okay.
What's going on with this dynamic?
So with the possessive parent, the mirror they're holding up is, you are an extension of me. They really see their children as possessions, almost like extensions of themselves, not as separate individuals with their own thoughts, feelings, and desires.
And that could be so damaging to a child's developing sense of self.
It really can. Imagine growing up feeling like you have to be a certain way, believe certain things, even choose certain friends or partners in order to please your parents, to maintain their love and their approval.
They're robbed of the opportunity to explore their own identity, to figure out who they are, what they value.
Exactly. And so you can imagine how this might lead to challenges in adulthood. Forming healthy relationships can be tough because they're so used to molding themselves to fit someone else's expectations.
And they might even feel lost, directionless, like they never really had that chance to figure out their own passions, their purpose.
They might feel a deep sense of emptiness, even when they've achieved what looks like success from the outside.
So how can someone who's, experiencing this kind of impact, how can they begin to heal?
Well, Engel really emphasizes separating your own identity from your parents. It's a process, recognizing that you are not responsible for their happiness, for their fulfillment.
You are allowed to be different. Have your own thoughts, your own feelings, make your own choices. Even if it disappoints your parents.
Even if it means disagreeing with them.
It can be so difficult to break free from those patterns, but it's so important.
It is.
It's about claiming your own life, living on your own terms.
Exactly.
Now, the emotionally incestuous parent, this one I think can be a little trickier to grasp.
It is complex. And it's important to clarify, this is not about overt sexual abuse.
Right.
It's about a parent inappropriately relying on their child for emotional support.
Oh, I see.
Right. So there's this blurring of boundaries, this kind of unhealthy dependence that develops.
So the child becomes like a confidant.
Surrogate partner, even a therapist.
Wow. And the message is, my needs come before yours.
My needs come before yours. That's a really heavy burden for a child to carry.
It is, because they're thrust into this role that they're just not emotionally equipped to handle.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine it can have a ripple effect, right? It impacts their own ability to then form healthy relationships later on.
Absolutely. They might have a hard time setting boundaries in their adult relationships, always giving more than they receive, neglecting their own needs.
It's like they're stuck in that childhood role,
Yeah.
the caretaker.
Yeah.
Always trying to fix, to rescue others,
Yeah.
often at the expense of their own well-being.
It's a pattern. And recognizing that pattern is the first step, right?
Yeah.
And then starting to set those healthy boundaries.
Right.
Engel talks about the importance of learning to say no, you know?
Oh, yeah?
Prioritizing your own self-care and building a support system outside of that unhealthy dynamic.
Because you are allowed to have needs, and you're allowed to express them,
Exactly.
and to have those needs met.
Yes. And that it's okay to prioritize your well-being, even if it means, sometimes disappointing others.
Yes. All right, so we've covered, 4 of the 7 so far?
We have.
The next one on the list is the controlling tyrannical parent.
Okay.
I mean, the name kind of speaks for itself, right?
It does. It does.
But I'm sure there's more to it.
There always is. It seems pretty straightforward, but that long-term impact can be, quite nuanced.
Right.
These parents rule with an iron fist, right? Yeah. They emphasize obedience above all else.
With structure.
Structure. And they use, intimidation or criticism, sometimes punishment, to maintain control. So the mirror they hold up reflects this message of, you are powerless.
You are powerless.
Yeah.
So then that child becomes an adult.
Right.
What happens?
Imagine going through life constantly second-guessing yourself, afraid to make a mistake, afraid to, step out of line.
Because they're so used to, there always being a consequence.
Exactly. That's the legacy of a controlling parent. These individuals, they might struggle to assert themselves even in situations where it's completely appropriate.
Right.
And they might even find themselves drawn to partners who are also controlling or domineering, unconsciously recreating that familiar dynamic from childhood.
It's like they're drawn to what's familiar, even if it's unhealthy.
Exactly. It's a common pattern. And a lot of times they don't realize they're doing it until they find themselves feeling trapped or suffocated in the relationship. So it's about recognizing that cycle,
right,
and knowing that you have a choice. You don't have to stay stuck in that cycle. You can break free from those old patterns and create healthier, more balanced relationships.
It's about taking back that power.
Yes. Reclaiming your power. And Engel actually provides, a roadmap for doing that. She talks about the importance of, again, setting boundaries, learning to identify and express your needs, and building a strong sense of self-worth.
Because you are not powerless.
Exactly.
You have a voice, you have choices, you deserve to be treated with respect.
Yes, yes, yes.
And that goes for everyone, no matter what kind of parent you had. All right, so moving on, we have the perfectionistic parent. This one feels especially relevant, I think, in today's, achievement-oriented society.
It's definitely a pervasive one. And striving for excellence isn't inherently a bad thing at all, but perfectionistic parents often set these really unrealistic expectations for their children.
Right.
And the message that's received is often, you are never good enough.
You are never good enough, no matter what you do.
No matter what they do, it's never enough to earn that love and approval. And that can be really damaging to their self-esteem. Imagine growing up constantly feeling like you're falling short, like you're just not measuring up.
It can lead to, a fear of failure, right?
Absolutely. A constant need for validation. They can't even celebrate their own accomplishment.
Yeah, because they're always chasing that moving target. It's never enough.
Exactly. You see it in adulthood, too, where they might be these high achievers, very driven to succeed, but they never feel satisfied or fulfilled. Or, on the flip side, they're terrified of taking risks because they're so afraid of making a mistake and not being perfect.
So it can manifest in different ways?
In different ways. And it's a recipe for anxiety and burnout, honestly. And it really comes down to recognizing that your worth, it's not determined by your achievements, by your productivity.
It's about learning to, celebrate those successes.
Yes.
To embrace the imperfections and just realize that, good enough is often good enough.
It is.
You don't have to be perfect.
Engel gives some great strategies for overcoming perfectionism, including challenging those all-or-nothing thought patterns, setting realistic expectations, and practicing a lot of self-compassion.
It's about moving away from that scarcity mindset.
Yes.
To a place of abundance, recognizing there's enough success to go around, enough love, enough happiness, and you are worthy of it.
Yes, you are. Just as you are.
Okay, so the last type of negative parental mirror that Engel talks about is the criticizing, shaming parent.
Ooh, yes. This one cuts deep because it's really targeting a child's sense of worth.
Their core sense of self.
Exactly. These parents, they rely on criticism, ridicule, sometimes even humiliation to control their kids. And it leaves them feeling inherently flawed, unworthy.
The message they receive, loud and clear, is, you are unacceptable.
You are unacceptable.
And internalizing that message, it can be really hard to shake.
Absolutely.
To go through life feeling inherently flawed, like you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not attractive enough.
It impacts everything.
It does.
It impacts your self-esteem, your relationships.
Everything. It can lead to those people-pleasing behaviors.
Yes.
That fear of, asserting your needs or your boundaries.
Absolutely, because they're going to such great lengths to avoid conflict, to avoid criticism, even if it means, compromising their own values or their own well-being.
It's like they're walking on eggshells all the time. Terrified of making a mistake, terrified of being judged or rejected.
Right. And think about how exhausting that must be to live like that all the time.
Yeah.
It can be really debilitating, It affects their relationships, their careers, just their overall sense of self.
So how do we begin to heal? How do we begin to heal from this?
Well, Engel talks about the importance of challenging those deeply ingrained negative self-beliefs, recognizing that you are not your parents' criticisms.
Mm-hmm.
And starting to build a new, more compassionate inner dialogue.
So it's about learning to treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer too, like a good friend.
Right. Exactly.
Recognizing that you are worthy of that love. You're worthy of acceptance, just as you are.
It's a journey, that's for sure. It takes time, it takes patience, and a whole lot of self-compassion. But the rewards, they're immeasurable. Because it's about breaking free from those shackles of shame and stepping into a life that feels authentic, joyful, and full of self-love.
And isn't that what we all want?
I think so. It's a journey. Yeah. It's a powerful reminder that we can choose to rewrite those narratives,
Yeah.
To step out of those limiting reflections and create a new, more empowering sense of self.
And that's where that concept comes in, right?
Yeah.
Engel's concept of shattering your parental mirror. It's like dismantling those distorted images and, reclaiming our own reflections.
Mm-hmm.
But I imagine it can feel kind of daunting, where do you even begin to do that?
It can be daunting. It's not always easy, especially when those negative messages have been playing on repeat since childhood, right?
Right.
But Engel does a great job of kind of breaking it down into these manageable steps. And she emphasizes that healing, real healing, it starts with facing some difficult truths.
Oh, okay.
It's about acknowledging the pain of those early experiences, allowing yourself to feel that anger, the sadness, the grief that you might have suppressed for years.
Yeah, it's like you always have to allow yourself to feel those wounds in order to really heal them.
That's actually.
But that can be terrifying for some people.
It is. And especially if they've been avoiding those emotions for a long time, So Engel, she stresses the importance of self-compassion, particularly during this phase. It's not about, beating yourself up for feeling a certain way. It's about creating this space of acceptance, understanding those emotions. And remember, you don't have to do this alone.
Right. You can always reach out to a therapist, a support group, even a trusted friend.
Exactly.
And that kind of ties into another really important element of Engel's process, giving back the shame.
Yes. Such a powerful concept.
It is. Because I think so often we internalize those negative messages and we end up blaming ourselves for the way we were treated.
Right.
We carry around this weight of shame. Like we were somehow deserving of that neglect or that abuse.
Yes, exactly. It's like we've taken on the responsibility for something that was never ours to carry in the first place.
And giving back the shame is about recognizing that it was not your fault.
Yes, not your fault.
And reclaiming your sense of worth.
Releasing that burden of self-blame. And it can be such a liberating experience for people. Engel, she even suggests things like, have you ever heard of writing a letter to the parent or caregiver who inflicted the pain?
Never.
Even if you never send it, just the act of writing it can be so cathartic.
It's like you're getting it all out.
Exactly. Expressing those pent-up emotions, acknowledging the impact of their actions, and ultimately setting yourself free from that shame.
Okay, so we've faced the truth. We've started to give back the shame. What's next in this shattering your parental mirror process?
Okay, so next up, Engel talks about emotional separation. And it's important to note, this doesn't necessarily mean cutting off contact with your parents completely, although that might be necessary in certain situations.
Right.
It's more about establishing healthier boundaries.
Right.
Even if you've been really enmeshed with your parents for years and years, redefining the relationship, putting yourself, your own needs, and your well-being first.
So if you're used to always putting your parents' needs before your own, maybe this looks like learning to say no more often, right? Setting limits on their demands, or choosing to, spend your time and energy in ways that actually feel nourishing to you.
Yes. Nourishing is a great word. It's about reclaiming that autonomy, creating some space, a sense of separation, which can be especially challenging if you grew up with a parent who really relied on you for emotional support, like the emotional incestuous parent that we discussed earlier.
Right. It's like learning to be your own person.
Exactly.
Define your own identity.
Separate from that parent-child dynamic.
Yeah.
And this process often involves grieving. Grieving for the relationship that you wish you had with that parent, while simultaneously accepting the reality of the one that you do have.
And I'm curious about the concept of inner child work. I know Engel talks about this, about connecting with that, wounded part of yourself. That child who experienced, maybe it was abuse, maybe it was neglect, offering them the love and compassion that they never received. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Of course. Imagine your inner child as like a younger version of you,
Oh.
still carrying around all those hurts, those insecurities from the past.
Yeah.
Inner child work is all about connecting with that part of yourself, offering that validation, the understanding it craves. You essentially become the loving, supportive parent that you never had.
Like rewinding the clock and giving yourself the love and care that you needed but didn't receive.
Exactly. It can be incredibly healing for people. Engel suggests visualization exercises, journaling, even having these dialogues with your inner child.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like they're a separate entity.
So let's say someone grew up with a really critical parent. Could they visualize themselves as that child after maybe a particularly harsh scolding, and then offer words of comfort?
Exactly. And it might sound something like, you are not what they said. You are worthy of love and belonging just as you are.
Wow.
Right.
That's powerful.
It's about countering those negative messages with compassion and understanding, both for your younger self and for the adult you are now.
So we've talked about shattering your parental mirror, but Engel also talks about creating a new mirror, right?
Yes.
So what does that entail?
It's about building a new, healthy sense of self, choosing to see yourself, through this lens of love, acceptance, and compassion, not those distorted reflections from the past.
So it's about recognizing that you are worthy of love, worthy of respect, worthy of happiness.
Yes. Regardless of what those old mirrors might have shown you.
Yeah, and it's not about, suddenly becoming this perfect person or achieving some, unrealistic ideal. It's about embracing your whole self.
Yes. Flaws and all.
Right. Because those imperfections are part of what make you unique.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. It's what makes you you. It's about shifting, I think, from a place of constantly criticizing yourself to a place of self-compassion.
So where do we begin?
Yeah.
How do we actually start to create this new, more empowering reflection?
Well, Engel talks about, affirmations are a great place to start. And those are those positive statements that you repeat to yourself, like, I am worthy of love, or I am capable of achieving my dreams.
Yeah, it might feel a little silly at first.
It might, but the more you repeat them, the more you start to internalize them.
Yeah, you're actually rewiring those neural pathways.
You are. You're retraining your brain. You're consciously choosing to focus on the positive and shifting those thoughts and beliefs about yourself from negative to positive.
And what about those times when those negative thoughts just keep creeping back in?
Yeah.
How do we quiet that inner critic?
Right. That inner voice that's always telling us we're not good enough.
Yeah.
Well, that's where techniques like cognitive reframing come in. It's about learning to identify those negative thought patterns and consciously choosing to challenge them and reframe them.
Okay, so for example, instead of thinking, I'm such a failure, I totally messed up that presentation, you could reframe it as, okay, the presentation didn't go exactly as planned, but you know what? I learned from the experience and I'll do better next time.
Exactly. Shifting from that self-judgment to self-compassion and understanding.
And Engel also really stresses the importance of self-care in this process, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's important to emphasize that self-care isn't selfish.
Yeah.
It's essential for our well-being.
Yeah.
Emotionally, mentally, it's about nurturing yourself on every level, physically, emotionally, spiritually.
It's about giving yourself permission to do things that bring you joy.
Yes. Fill your cup, whether that's taking a walk in nature or listening to your favorite music, Maybe it's spending time with loved ones or just curling up with a good book. It's about really prioritizing your own needs.
And I think that can be really hard for people who maybe they grew up with parents who were emotionally unavailable or maybe very demanding. They learn to suppress their own needs.
Exactly. And it's like they never really learned that it's okay to have needs, that it's okay to express them, and it's okay to have those needs met.
Right.
And that's why self-care is so crucial.
Yeah.
It's about reclaiming your right to prioritize yourself, to set those boundaries and create a life that feels nourishing and fulfilling.
Yes. Because you are worthy. You are worthy of that care and attention, both from yourself and from others.
Absolutely. And one of the things I find so empowering about Engel's approach is this real emphasis on action. You know, it's not enough to just understand these concepts intellectually.
Right.
You have to be willing to actually put in the work, to really make changes in your thoughts, in your behaviors, and in your relationships.
It's about taking that knowledge and translating it into action.
Exactly. It's about actively creating a new, more empowering reality for yourself. And, you know, as daunting as that might sound, it can also be so incredibly liberating.
It's empowering.
It is. You have the power to heal, to grow, to create this life that's aligned with your true self.
And that's a beautiful message, a message of hope. It really is. Like, we're not just passive recipients of our experiences. You know, we actually have the power to shape our reality.
It's incredibly empowering when you think about it that way, because it means that no matter what's happened in the past, no matter what those old mirrors might have shown us, we're not stuck.
Right.
We can heal, we can grow, we can create a new, more empowering reflection of ourselves.
And it's like we're not just looking in the mirror anymore. You know, we're actually holding the mirror. We're choosing where to focus it, deciding what we want to see.
I love that. And speaking of reflections, Engel also dives into this fascinating topic of body image, how it can be influenced by those early parental mirrors too.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's huge. I think so many people can relate to that. It's so easy to internalize those messages about our bodies, especially when they come from, you know, the people that we love and trust most.
It really is. Think about all those, you know, maybe offhand comments that were made, you know, about your weight, your hair, your clothes, even your smile.
Oh, yeah.
Those messages, you know, even if they weren't intended to be hurtful, they still get in there, you know, and repeated over time, they can really shape the way that we see ourselves, often in ways that are super critical.
And it's not just the things that our parents said outright.
Right.
It's also about, like, the messages that they conveyed through their own behaviors, through their own attitudes.
Exactly. So if you grew up with a parent who was, you know, constantly dieting or criticizing their own body, you might have internalized this message that your body is something that needs to be fixed, controlled.
Or if you were, like, praised mainly for your appearance,
Yeah.
you might have learned to connect your self-worth with your physical attractiveness, you know?
Which, like you said, can be a very slippery slope.
It can lead to a lot of insecurity, a lot of self-doubt, especially, I think, in a culture that just bombards us constantly with these unrealistic beauty standards.
Everywhere you look.
It is. So how do we begin to heal that relationship with our bodies? Like, how do we even begin to, like, challenge those negative thoughts?
Well, Engel talks about the importance of developing body positivity, which isn't about, you know, forcing yourself to love every single part of your body.
Right.
It's more about cultivating, I don't know, a sense of acceptance, like appreciating all the amazing things that your body can do.
Yeah, recognizing that our bodies are not just objects, right, to be judged or admired. They're vessels that carry us through this life. They allow us to, like, experience the world in all its richness and complexity.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
It is. That's something to be celebrated. And so Engel actually encourages us to really focus on nourishing our bodies, you know, with healthy food and movement and rest, not punishing ourselves with these, like, restrictive diets or crazy workouts.
Right. It's about treating your body with kindness.
Yes.
With respect. Recognizing that, you know, it's doing its best to support us every single day.
And it is. Every single day. That's a powerful shift to move away from that self-criticism and move towards self-compassion, you know? Away from scarcity towards a mindset of abundance.
Yeah, yeah. And that's really, I think, what this whole journey of healing our emotional selves is all about, right?
Yeah.
It's about recognizing those negative patterns, the ones that aren't serving us, breaking free from those old distorted mirrors and creating something new, a more empowering reflection of ourselves.
Yes. Stepping into our truth.
Correct.
Embracing our whole selves. It's about living a life that feels authentic, joyful, and fulfilling.
It's a journey.
It is.
It takes time, it takes courage, and it takes a whole lot of self-love.
You got this.
And you don't have to do it alone. There are therapists, there are support groups, there are so many resources available to help you.
If you're feeling stuck, reach out.
Exactly. And, as we wrap up this deep dive into Beverly Engel's Healing Your Emotional Self, we wanted to leave you with one final thought-provoking question from the book. If you could give your inner child a message of love and support, what would it be?
What would you say?
Yeah. What does that younger version of yourself need to hear?
Right. What words of comfort and encouragement can you offer? Because it's a really powerful exercise in self-compassion, and it's a beautiful reminder that, true healing, it starts from within.
It does. It really does. We hope that this deep dive has given you some valuable insights and maybe even inspired you to start your own journey of emotional healing, because
you deserve it.
Yes, you are worthy of love, you're worthy of happiness, and you're worthy of a life that feels authentically yours.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, keep diving deep.
See you next time.